You're listening to Whoa! Potluck.
And welcome to Books and Boba, a book club and podcast featuring books by Asian and Asian American authors. My name is Marvin Yue.
And I'm Rira Yu.
And we are here today for an author chat with Carolyn Huynh, the author of The Fortunes of Jaded Women, a former Books and Boba book club pick, about her latest novel, The Family Recipe. As always, the Books and Boba podcast is supported in part by our listeners. So if you've been enjoying our podcast and want to become a bigger part of our book club, head on over to patreon.com/booksandboba, where as an official Patreon supporter, you can gain access to our members-only Discord server, where you can interact with us and fellow members in real time. And if you support us on the Honey Boba level, you also gain access to our monthly bonus podcast Boba Chats, as well as the ability to suggest one of our book club picks every quarter. So definitely hope to see more of you there, and appreciate everyone who have joined us so far.
Yeah, but we had a great time talking to Carolyn. We've actually wanted her on our show for some time now. And both of her books are about really messy families. So we had a lot of fun talking about that. And also talking about her research into sea drift back in the 70s. We also talked about just Succession and House of Ho. So yeah, a lot of fun topics. And I hope you guys enjoy our conversation. And we are here with Carolyn Huynh, the author of The Fortunes of Jaded Women, which was a Good Morning America book club pick and is currently being adapted for television. And we're here to talk about her sophomore book, The Family Recipe, which released on April 1st. Welcome to the show, Carolyn.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I'm a big fan of you guys.
Yeah, we're really excited. We've been trying to get you on the pod ever since Fortunes of Jaded Women. So I'm glad we finally got you on to talk about your sophomore book. I do want to interject, though, because Rira, Fortunes of Jaded Women was also a Books and Boba book club pick.
I mean, I was going to bring it up, but just, for intro's sake.
I know, just up top, like plugging someone else's book club. I mean,
we're not as prestigious as Good Morning America, which is a freaking national platform. So
I think you guys are on the same level.
So I like to start our conversation with an icebreaker, since your book is about a sandwich shop, pretty much. Do you have a go-to banh mi place in California, since we all are local?
I do. I go to Banh Mi Hoa Phat in Rosemead. Do you guys know that one?
Yeah,
they're famous for like their roasted pork.
Yeah. What about you, Marvin? You're like a big foodie. Like, do you have like a banh mi shop that you frequent?
I just follow my Vietnamese friends and go wherever they take me.
Yeah, that's the same thing
on
for
the
me.
Others, like maybe so. On the other hand, my high school friends, like most of my high school friends are Vietnamese because I grew up in the SGV, and they're also super cheap. So for the longest time, we went to Banh Mi Che Kali, which had like $3 for $5 deal, which was like, pretty good. That's when nuts. You're poor in high school.
I will argue that Jack Ellie has the best shredded chicken banh mi ever. They have like perfected that recipe.
My wife would actually like Banh Mi My Toe, which is also in, I think it's in Rosemead and Alhambra.
I also really like Banh Mi Saigon, because they have like the rounded banh mi, which is like really fun to eat into.
Yeah. How about you, Rira?
Honestly, this is the wrong question for me, because literally I am like passenger princess when it comes to like Vietnamese food. Like a lot of the times I'm like not even paying attention to the menu, because my friend would be like, she'll have this. And and it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, like I'm not picky. I don't really have dietary restrictions, so yeah.
But do you have like a go-to? Like, do you like the cold cuts better, or do you like the roasted pork better? Like, what type of meat?
I do like pork the best, so yeah. But like honestly, I just get whatever my Vietnamese friends just shove into me. It's kind of the same when we go to like Korean restaurants. I'm always just like, I'm gonna pick what is good for you. So you either eat it or starve. It's a beautiful friendship.
See, I like that though. I like being baby. You know, you like having
yeah.
someone like tell you what to eat.
So before we move on to like talk about your sophomore novel, I just want to like go back in time. Like, how did you become a writer? Was this a thing that you did when you were still in high school? Or is this something that you kind of stumbled into later on in life?
I have always been like a big reader and writer of any kind. I think like in junior high, I was like in like I've always got a lot of encouragement from my writing teachers. My English teacher in junior high, she really encouraged me. And then when I went on to high school, same thing, college. I was really big into writing fan fiction in high school. So I wrote a lot of Harry Potter fan fiction, as one millennial does. But I wrote like queer fan fiction between Sirius and James. And they had like a secret relationship. And then in college, I majored in journalism. And I really wanted to be a journalist. And I ended up working for some like local Seattle neighborhood blogs, as well as I freelance for one of the Asian newspapers in Seattle, the International Examiner. But in my mind, like, you know, journalism is just a really hard career. It's really tough. I just don't think it was sustainable. I had no money. But I also really always wanted to write fiction. I think that was always like my first love. So I actually wrote 2 YA books that I tried to query again, agent. This is like a long time ago. It was probably like 2011, 2013, 2015. So I wrote 2 YA books. It didn't really go anywhere. I had a lot of like tepid responses from agents, and I just realized like maybe YA isn't really cut out for me, or I wasn't cut out for YA. So I kind of took a long break. I went to grad school. I studied something completely different. And then, but I was like always like itching to keep writing. So I started working on my debut book, which is The Fortunes of Jaded Women. I spent 5 years working on that one. And I was working in the tech field at the time, and I was deeply, deeply unhappy. So I applied again for my MFA in creative writing. And the first week I was in that program, I got an offer from an agent. And I promptly dropped out of my MFA program.
Good for you.
And I went down that path instead. But that book also took a long time to get to the shelves. I originally wrote that book as a short story collection, and it was more literary fiction. And the editor that was interested in the book, she wanted to be more upmarket commercial and to combine all the stories together. And so I spent some time revising that script, and then we resubmitted back to her. And then, yeah, the rest is kind of history. And so I am a little bit of a late bloomer in that regard, where it probably took me 10, 15 years.
You know, that doesn't sound like a late bloomer stuff. I feel like that's very standard for publishing, as like depressing as that might sound to our listeners. Like, yeah, it does take like 10, 15 years to.
And like, yeah, and multiple attempts. I will say though, there are a lot of Gen Z authors now, and I'm like always like astonished and like amazed by like how they're able to navigate the system of publishing so well.
Yeah, I think it's also like they have that confidence, you know, because they're just like, I mean, like, there are like other Asian American authors now, so it's just like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And I feel like there's been also like a surge of like young authors. So, you know, when you see your peers do it, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll do it. That's pretty much what youth is. You don't know what you're getting into.
I also kind of feel like the types of book that I've seen a lot of them writing were probably the same stories you guys were writing back in the, you know, the fanfic days, just like with like original characters. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of them are like those like romance, fantasy, like tropey stories, right?
I feel like in times of a recession of some kind, or like economic turmoil or political turmoil, romance always keeps people afloat because it's like just really good escapism. So I think that has to do with it coming back around too.
Yeah.
I mean, like the fan fiction to publishing pipeline is like pretty
It's real.
solid these days. A lot of Raylo fics becoming
Oh,
like
God.
actual books.
Yeah.
And like I don't know who it was, but I think someone was like publishing like an alpha, beta, omega like book, and I was like, oh no, we went from like this is a bad place, and it's made it into publishing.
Yeah.
I don't know which book that was, but I remember seeing it on the news, and I was like, no, this is terrible. But you know, The Family Recipe is your sophomore novel, and from what I've heard, it was written on proposal. So did you experience the dreaded sophomore slump? Because obviously your first book, you have all the time in the world to like perfect it on your own time. But when you're writing on proposal, there's a harder deadline.
I will say, I think the sophomore slump is a real curse. And whether it's internal or like external like factors coming into play, I felt like I no longer had the magic of writing for myself like I did for my debut book. I think you can never really recreate that magic again. I will say I think I became a better writer, but I think I also forgot how to write. And when I did sell on proposal, but nothing I sold has been retained. Everything I submitted has been reworked and revised. And, you know, I'm not the type of writer who outlines or like and does like extensive notes. I know it sounds crazy, but I always start off with the title, the first sentence and the last sentence, and everything else I figure out along the way. So when I wrote this book, I probably have 3 or 4 drafts of 3 or 4 drafts that look nothing like each other. And this one was particularly hard for me because it does have a historical fiction element involved. And the research that I needed to sort of, the research I had originally wanted to use kept changing the more I did research. And so the more things I discovered about that time period and the lawsuit that I read about, the more the story changed.
Yeah, we'll come back to the historical fiction part too later in this chat, because I found that pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I will say that sounds wild to me that you don't outline, because
I don't
your
outline.
both books feature such an extensive cast of characters with like very complex relationships with each other and to their communities. Like, so how, like, when you write these stories, do they just come out of you, or do you focus on one character at a time? Like, how does it all come together when there's no, like, it sounds like you don't like have like a set plan of where you want everything to go. Like,
my literary agent once said to me, like, I make life really hard for myself, but I cannot comprehend how some people can outline and like map out their characters and their journey. I actually write in a very linear way. So I'll do chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, but I have no idea what will happen. I know it sounds crazy, but my brain just kind of like, my brain is very like, Jesus, take the wheel. And I kind of just like, let it come out of me. I don't know why. I just have always been that way. I'm very much a type B person too.
I think that is a very like freeing way to write. I'm definitely more of like an outline person. Like, I remember like when I was in school for screenwriting, I like outline for every single scene. And you can imagine like how long my outline was.
Oh my gosh.
And
no,
it's
I
just
hate
like,
that.
I am very type A. So whenever I see type B people who, you know, just write as they go, I'm like, what is that like to just not carry the world on your shoulders when you're writing your characters, because you're like, I need to steer these characters in the direction that I want them to go in, but they're not going in the direction that I chose for them. They seem to have free will, and oh my god, like everything is going off tracks. It's a lot. So either way, like either writing styles, they have their drawbacks.
They do.
Yeah, as someone
Yeah.
who doesn't write for a living, I just think either way just sounds like magic. So, props to both of you on your own styles. But yeah, let's get into the book we're talking about this episode, The Family Recipe, which is, like we said, your sophomore book. Can you let our readers know a little bit about what your book is all about?
I have such a hard time describing it because it's so chaotic, but The Family Recipe is, I would say it's an inheritance game. So it's Succession meets House of Ho, the reality TV show. I don't know if you guys watch that, but basically the patriarch of this Vietnamese national chain sandwich suddenly retires, and he forces his 5 adult children to go on this crazy inheritance scheme to take over the shop. And the real reason as to why he sends them off on this like crazy excursion slowly gets revealed as like the family mystery unfolds a bit more. I like to say that my first debut book is a book for my mommy issues, and this book is for my daddy issues. So yes.
I do watch House of Ho. I did watch House of Ho, and that just made everything click even more for me. I understand the characters now.
Okay, yeah. I love House of Ho. I wish it was still going on, but that's okay.
I have not watched House of Ho, but I've watched Succession, and it's like one of my favorite TV shows. So yeah, I definitely get the feels. I don't know, like I feel like when you make it like Asian inheritance like drama, like it's so much more heightened because like I don't know, we're more vicious. Like
It's more vicious.
there's not as much cloak and dagger. Like it's more like in your face stabbing. So.
Yeah, it's in your face, and like context is so important, right? And so there's like so many layers to it, like the eldest daughter, the eldest son, the youngest sibling. It's just like it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot.
So yeah, like Duke Sandwiches in your novel is obviously like the fictionalized version of Lee Sandwiches.
Yes.
And it kind of made me wonder like if the Lee kids ever like duked it out in running the most successful branch of their family's franchise. And I'm like, oh, where did Carolyn get this like idea from? Can you walk us through how you developed the story?
Yes. So my husband is Vietnamese, and he grew up in the Bay Area. So he grew up in San Jose. He actually went to school he grew up with the kids of the Lee Sandwich family in San Jose. And I think, when they were kids, like I think it was just like one shop in San Jose. And then by the time he went to high school, it obviously was like the empire that it is now currently. And I think when he went off to college or whatever, he had this story about the kids where each of the kids again, this is like very apocryphal. I don't know if it's true or not. No one really knows if it's true, but it's just like stories that people have told about each other in the Bay Area. But I like those type of legends because there is some kernel of truth, I'm sure. But the kids, when they grew up, they wanted to modernize Lee's Sandwiches, but they didn't know how. And so each of the kids supposedly took over a store to experiment, and they each had their own take on how to modernize Lee's Sandwiches for the next generation and for like a wider palette, perhaps. And one of the stories my husband told me was like one of them installed strobe lights. And I thought that was so funny because they're kind of essentially throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. And I just love that because it speaks so much to like, I don't know, like second generation, new money, maintaining generational wealth when you didn't really necessarily have it growing up, and like what that looks like, and like trying to be faithful to like the faithful customers versus like trying to bring it. I don't know. It was like, oh, it's just like made me laugh so hard because like, why would the guy install
Put
strobe lights? Yeah, and I was like, was it like have to do with, like the rave scene? I don't know, right? Like what was he thinking? What were they
It's like
thinking?
happy hour. We're gonna
Yeah, he
liven
probably
it up.
wanted to
Yeah.
turn into like Thursday nights at the sound
Yes.
shop, club
At a
nights,
sandwich
DJ
shop.
night.
Oh my gosh.
But to me, it's like it's a freaking sandwich shop. You know what I mean? But I'm sure like I'm sure each of them felt like this weight on their shoulder to sort of carry on the legacy, right? It's not like we have a lot of legacy as second generation anyway. So it's like they must have felt like, how do we continue this name on? And one of the funny things about Lee's sandwiches is I think the owner added on the second E to make it more
Oh.
palatable to better to I don't know, like more easier to pronounce or something. So I think that's like pretty funny.
Oh.
That's funny. I wonder how many family like restaurant empires are like that, because it reminds me of there's this, it's not a chain, but there's this pho place here in Rosemead called Summer Rolls that
Oh, I know Summer Rolls.
yeah, they opened another branch in like this brand new plaza, and it was opened as like a gastropub type of place. And it obviously it felt like this was the son or like the child of the owners trying to do something different. But like within a year, it kind of reverted operations back into like a regular pho place. So I wonder if the dad took over because he didn't like what he saw or something.
Or maybe it didn't garner the type of customer base that they want. You never know, right?
Yeah.
And it's always interesting to me, like how do you modernize? Yeah, how do you modernize and how do you make it more commercial?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, and I love how each sibling in your book goes about like planning on how to like modernize their shop. Some are more successful than others, but overall it's kind of a mess. And I think you write the sibling dynamic so well, and you make it very clear that each sibling has a different relationship with their parents as well as like their Vietnamese heritage respectively, because you have like Jane, who is the eldest, and she has a lot of resentment for her mother, rightfully, and you have Georgia, who is the youngest and can barely speak any Vietnamese, and she kind of yearns for that connection. So how did you come up with the characteristics for each sibling?
I did this for Fortunes too, where like Fortunes in my debut book, there's like over 14 POVs. And for here, they begged me to like not do as many of an ensemble. So of course I halved it to like 8 POVs. But I do have this like one trick that I do, which is what's that Pixar movie where each of the emotions are one character?
Oh, Inside Out.
Yes, Inside Out. Yeah. So I do that for my characters, where one person represents anger, one represents like happiness, one represents like all this stuff. And so that's kind of like how I carve out each person. And then yeah, I think I also just pull from my own desires and yearning too, where with Georgia, like I same with Fortunes too. I put myself a little self insert to each of the characters of like and say for here too, like each of the characters had a little bit of me in it. And so I kind of split up that onion layer being diaspora into each of these characters.
Yeah, I was wondering how you kept track of all of the siblings, because all of their journeys are, very distinct. They go in way different directions. And I'm like, I wonder if she had an outline for this, but you just proved to us earlier that you're just like writing as you go. And that's really amazing.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a lot of POVs to juggle.
It is. Yeah, it's a lot. But I think it's so interesting to me that a lot of readers have asked me, will I ever write more of an intimate book with like 2 or 3 characters versus like so many an ensemble? But my mind is so chaotic that I think in an ensemble, like so many voices. I don't know. It's weird. I will one day write my Sally Rooney with just 2 characters. But that day is not today. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's also true to like, the modern Vietnamese family. Like again, I grew up with a lot of Vietnamese classmates. I've been to their houses. I've met their four, five, six brothers and sisters and extended family. I think, there's just something, I don't know if chaotic is the right word, but there's like definitely like an energy in like a Vietnamese family that's like just a lot of energy like smashing together. And I think your books really capture that really well.
It's a lot of overstimulation.
It is. Yeah. Yes, exactly. That's that's the exact word I'm looking for my reader. I want them to feel overstimulated and also like claustrophobic. Because like, yeah, in my like day-to-day life now, I make sure my home life is like very peaceful compared to how I grew up, which is very chaotic, very like overstimulated, a lot of voices all at once. But yeah, that's what I'm trying to capture.
So we've covered that you don't follow an outline when you write, but I'm curious, when did you come up with the naming convention for your siblings, and all of them being essentially Beatles references?
I think it had something to do with like maybe the historical time period too, where like the Vietnam War, American soldiers are listening to the Beatles, and like that type of our parents were affected by the music that they heard. And I just love the idea that Duke, the father in the series, the patriarch, I just love the idea of him being kind of like a buffoon, and he thinks the Beatles are like so American. And so he names the children after what he thinks is very Americana culture, because of what he sees the soldiers listening to. I don't know. I just like think that like, I thought there was like some kind of like humor in that. And so, yeah, that's when I was like, oh, I'll do some sort of bastardized version of their names for the children.
If my name was Bingo, I would change that so fast as soon as I turned 18. Absolutely no way. So props to Bingo in the novel for, having that resistance.
There's a Vietnamese author who messaged me and said her aunt was named Bingo. So there's a lot of similarities, and yeah, I just think, yeah. So I was like, oh, maybe I wasn't too far off in the nomenclature of these names. Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely a thing. My dad named me and my brother after pop culture references as well. They're very obscure pop culture references. I was named after a film composer, Marvin Hamlick. And my brother was named after Max Headroom, the 80s like AI actor person.
My husband and his brother was named after the royal family, so Charles and Andrew.
Oh my God.
I'm just glad that my husband was not named Andrew.
Andrew.
given the present.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like your debut novel, The Fortunes of Jaded Women, it's pretty much like a female-centric cast. It's an all-woman family that is pretty much cursed to have only daughters. And I thought it was interesting how in this book, there's a lot of women, obviously, there's a lot of sisters. But you have Jude, who is the only son among a flock of sisters. So how was that? Like just throwing like a young man's POV into a mix of strong, opinionated women?
Gosh. It's funny because I was like, oh, maybe I'll try something different for this book. But it's actually very hard for me to write male characters that I can empathize with. Yeah, I think writing Jude was, for me personally, was as difficult as writing the historical fiction part, along with writing the other men, Duke and Huey, who is like his business partner and friend in the book, in a very like sympathetic light, just because. Yeah, I'm not used to that mindset, but it was a good challenge for me to do. I don't think I would ever write a male character again, to be honest. But it was a good writing exercise for me to do.
Yeah.
Was it a lot of giving pages to your husband and be like, does this sound like somewhat accurate to you, authentic to you?
Surprisingly, he hasn't read it yet. I don't show him anything. I don't show him anything.
Oh.
I don't show anybody anything. the only people who ever read it are my agent and my editor, and that's it.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's actually something that's rare. I've heard so many like authors sharing their pages with like their partners or like their
'Cause-
writing
yeah.
group before they give it to their editor. So yeah.
He was a former editor-in-chief, or yeah, he was a former journalist too, and an editor.
Oh,
So
I can see why. Yeah, that's a little bit scary.
He tried to read it once, and I saw like all this like grammar like notes come back. I was like, I'm not dealing with this.
Yeah.
This is not. I didn't sign up for this.
This
Yeah.
is why I don't type emails in front of my wife, because she'll look over my shoulder and say, "You missed a comma there." You can disappear." I'm like, "I'm typing it now. I'm gonna
Yeah.
go back and fix it later."
Yeah.
Also,
yeah.
like journalism is very structured. Like you need to
It
freaking
is.
know where you are going. Every word counts. So if you're writing a sprawling novel, then it's like,
Yeah.
like it can be really intimidating if you have like a journalist look over it. Yeah, I think you made the right call.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Speaking of Jude, like when you mentioned your House of Home inspiration, like it kind of clicked into me, kind of the relationship between like the sisters and the brother, him being the oldest,
Yes.
and like him having like kind of a privileged position, because he does get a different challenge from their father for his inheritance, where he's required to get married. But I do appreciate that you didn't make him as much of a fail son as what's his name, Washington.
Washington.
Yeah.
Oh, but it's interesting that family was named after presidents.
Yeah.
So I thought, again, a really interesting Vietnamese thing that people do at families where they name their children after historical figures or pop culture icons.
Yeah, I mean the whole like idea of the oldest son like challenge being like, you need to freaking marry, you need to settle down. I was like, wow, this is the most Asian thing ever.
Yeah. I was like to us, that's like the easy ask, right? But to him, it's like
so hard.
He's like climbing Everest commitment. You know what I mean? Yeah, I just like love that the women have to work so much harder always.
Yeah.
And all he has to do is like get married to somebody.
But I also appreciate that he's conflicted about it, right? Like a more mercenary oldest son would like, oh yeah, I'll get married to get the money. Like,
yeah, I mean, he's a soft boy. He's just like, I just want like,
he's a soft boy.
I want someone to love me, because his family is so messy and like mommy issues, daddy issues, like it is a lot. And I just love how both of your books are like messy, and you have very messy characters, especially the women. I think there's like this blanket generalization that all Asian women are, docile and also like filial caregivers. But you have women in your book who just like, they're just like, okay, I graduated from school, I'm going to college out of state, you'll never see me again, bye. And a lot of people in our community might say like, oh, that's so selfish, but like I personally, I don't think that's selfish. Like, I feel like a lot of people in our generation who grew up in chaotic households, it's really important for them to like go out and figure out how to live by themselves and find their peace. So how do you feel about writing these really messy Asian women characters in your books?
I really like unlikable Asian women too. And I think I get a lot of like people DMing me or emailing me like, God, I hated these characters. Like I couldn't root for them. And in my mind, I'm like, good. Because, like most people are always like, they always expect Asian women to be compliant, to sort of like follow orders, be a good soldier. But the fact that I have people say, God, I hated your book because I couldn't root for anybody, I'm like, good. That sort of helps offset those stereotypes. But also, most of my life, most of the friends I've grown up with, most of the friends I've seen, through college and like adulthood, like they've all been unlikable people. And that's because, and I say that in a loving way, because, I find that trying to find yourself as an Asian woman takes a little bit longer. I just think it's a lot of unpacking of trauma, trying to find yourself, trying to untangle yourself from family and like expectations placed on you. So I always like root for the Asian woman at the end, just because, I see the hardship and I see what they are like when they come out on the other side.
Yeah.
So.
And let's be honest, they ate up the messy, unlikable characters in Succession, right? Like
Yeah.
there's a little something there.
And I just love how like each of the sibling as well is a different type of mess.
Yeah.
You have like Jane, who, you know, is a lawyer and supposedly has her life together because she's responsible and was kind of like the maternal figure in the group. But like obviously all of like carrying all of that on your shoulders, it's a lot. So obviously it will like fall apart. And then you have the middle siblings, Pauline and Bingo, and it's like they have their own issues where they're trying to find a place where they belong, or, you know, a person that they can just latch onto and have them be their, you know, companion. But they have struggles like opening up to people because of family and intergenerational traumas. I do love how trauma kind of manifests in each sibling.
Yeah. And it's like how do you unpack that on your own when you're kind of like physically far away from everybody else, but also like trying to like grow as a person. Yeah.
And it also goes to show that each sibling has a different parent. You're never going to be parented the same way, and like every kid is different, so they're going to be affected differently. Yeah. So I thought it was like a really good like experiment in a way, just like they're like, oh, this is like a good sociology experiment on how like children of immigrants, you know, carry their trauma in different ways. But yeah, we talked about the family quite a bit, but I want to get to the historical research stuff. So I had not realized that the flashback chapters to Seadrift, Texas were based on real historical events until I read your acknowledgments. So can you kind of set the scene for our listeners who haven't read the book, like what Seadrift is, like what this time period is, and what your research process was?
I knew I always wanted to write a story set in Texas, and the more research I did about Vietnamese in the South and that sort of like migration period, I realized I couldn't really write it without talking about this particular lawsuit that happened in the late 70s, early 80s, down in Galveston, Seadrift, Texas, where a group of Vietnamese fishermen sued the KKK and they won the lawsuit. And I knew about this a long time ago, back in like 2019, 2020. I think it's like 2019. At the Seattle Asian American Film Festival, I saw the documentary Seadrift there. It's produced by Dr. Tao Ha. And the director's like Tim Tsai, and it's a documentary about what happened in Seadrift. And even before that, I had heard of it a little bit, but I didn't really like understand it. But the documentary was sort of like the first time I've ever seen it really like well laid out. And so then I wanted to incorporate a bit of that history into the book, because the incredible thing isn't just because they won the lawsuit. The other thing is the judge at the time was a Black female judge. And I think it was so important to document that, because I feel like had this lawsuit been going on at this time period, I don't think they would have won, right? And it's crazy that it happened in the late 70s and they did win. And it probably took a lot of, it did take a lot of people coming together to sort of like build this case together. And yeah, I was always just like really fascinated by that. And I went down to Houston. I drove down to Galveston. I kind of followed that same trail that I saw them do from Seadrift to Kima, that where the historical events have happened, where the KKK had like this boat that came to intimidate the fishermen, and they had hung this like fake effigy, this of a Vietnamese man swinging to sort of threaten the community down there. But so I followed that. I rewatched Sea Drift. I read the book, The Fisherman and the Dragon, which is a nonfiction book that goes really into detail about what happened there. And but in my mind, like, I wasn't so much interested in what sparked the KKK coming after the Vietnamese. I was more interested in the lawsuit. And the part that intrigued me was when they won, the KKK had a list of names that they kind of like put together of witnesses who testified. And I wondered what would happen if one of the parents in the book was put on that list. And that sort of like sparked the whole book for me.
Yeah, I mean, when I was reading the book, I was like, the KKK? I did not expect them to make a surprise appearance. But yeah, it makes sense of that time period. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really, really fascinating lawsuit. Yeah.
Yeah. It also made sense that you actually went to Texas and kind of followed the trail of this case, because I think your sense of place is really solid, because you feature a number of cities in this book, because each sibling has like has a branch, and they're in different cities, like San Jose, like Pennsylvania, like Houston. So, like, did you go to each of these cities as well? Or, like, did you live in any of these cities that the trans siblings, like, temporarily moved to?
I've been to all those places. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I have been out, and each of them has a very significant meaning to me, where, especially in Philadelphia, my father, when he was sponsored to Lancaster, Pennsylvania after the war. So that was an homage to his story too, where he literally landed in Amish County, and that was his first experience of America. And so, and he has been obsessed with Philadelphia ever since. So that was sort of like my own tribute to my father and his migration experience.
Yeah, definitely clocked that the locations that the siblings were sent to are all they're all major Vietnamese enclaves. Has that played into like your book tour? Or have you been able to visit all these places and share your book with everyone there? And how have they received it?
I haven't really gone on a lot of tours this time. I got really sick the week of my launch, and I canceled 2 events in San Jose. One in Oakland, one here, and yeah, I haven't really done too much. I've done some sparing events throughout LA, Santa Barbara, and I'm going to Santa Fe at the end of May. But I haven't really had a chance to visit those places yet. I'm hoping to this summer, though.
Did you have like a favorite city you liked writing about?
I think I really enjoyed. It's not so much the city; it's more of like the characters. And I think my favorite would probably be Bingo in Philadelphia.
Yeah. I think you write like the romance pretty well too, because it's very unsuspecting. Like,
yeah,
oh, okay, like this cutie is now on my radar. Like, was the romance something that you always planned, or did it just like sneak into your writing while you were writing these characters?
I think I never thought I'd be good at writing romance, but after Fortunes, people were kind of inquiring if I could write a real romance one day, because I give small hints. I don't really flesh it out in Fortunes. For this one, I think I'm still too afraid to write real romance, but I think I wanted to try my hand at this. And yeah, I think finding romantic love can really help foster one's search for identity too, because you don't really know what you're like until you don't know what sort of manifests or comes out of you until you're in that really vulnerable space. So yeah, I think writing the romance for each of these characters has been a real highlight of mine, actually, and I actually might really try to write a real romance book one day. Yeah.
You say one day, but
I was-
I was like, maybe that is your next project.
Yeah,
Are
maybe.
you working on anything right now?
Yeah, I have a third book coming out fall of 2026. It's very different than Fortunes or Family Recipe. It's a near future dystopian about like AI, motherhood, and like the male loneliness epidemic. But the pitches
Very,
of
very timely.
but the pitches of the women in Handmaid's Tale formed a union. What would happen? Yeah, and so that's sort of like what's coming up out next. And I think maybe for my fourth book, I should write romance. Actually, yeah, I will try my hand at it. Yes.
It was it's just so much fun to read your books, Carolyn. I really enjoyed that. You know, your first book starts with everyone kind of separated, and then we bring everyone together at the end. It really reminded me of like a really good episode of Arrested Development, where it's like all these separate storylines coming together and like colliding chaotically. And I really liked how your second book starts with them colliding, and then they split off into their own storylines. That was really fun to kind of just follow, you know, all of your, and just amazing that just the fact that like all this just comes to you as you write. I think I'm still in shock at how well it comes together too. Like it's a really fun book. I really, you know, it's been out for about a month now. How has been the reception been? Like, how you mentioned you've been getting emails from your readers. Like, you know, how's it feel to have your second book out in the world for a while now?
I have a little bit mixed feelings about this book because it did really change a lot. And I will say, I think the sophomore slump in my mind is very much internal versus external. And I think I didn't really give myself very much grace when I wrote the book. But now looking back on the process that I got here, I feel very proud actually. I do miss the original title and I wish we could have kept that, but it was called The Breadwinner. So, but yeah, I look back quite fondly on this process. So I'm very happy to get over the sophomore slump and move over to the third, I don't know, what's the thirsty third? I don't know. I don't know what's it called.
If we're going by like high school junior?
The junior
yes.
jump, right? Or
Junior jump, yes,
jump,
yeah. Oh my god, I was like the third turd. Oh no. Yeah, the junior, yeah.
The third act.
Yeah.
How about that?
The third act.
Third
Oh,
act.
there
Yeah,
you go.
there
There
we
you
go.
go. There you go, Marvin. Okay.
All right. Well, Carolyn, thank you so much for joining us on Books and Boba. It's been such a great time chatting with you, and happy to finally have you on our podcast.
Yeah.
Our
Hopefully I'll
listeners
come
don't
back.
know how long we've been trying to make this happen, because I've seen Carolyn at like other like book events, and like sometimes like Marvin has seen her and like I'm not there because I'm sick or I'm like traveling, and then like
we've been saying we
there's a
should
lot of,
have
like-
you on for like at least
Yeah, one more time.
over a year. Probably.
Yeah.
they're like it's a lot of misconnections, but I'm glad that we finally made it happen.
Yeah.
So, yay.
Can I please address one point from the previous podcast you did about Fortunes of Jaded Women?
Oh yeah, sure.
It's been with me for 2-3 years, and I just want to address it with you guys.
Oh my
That-
gosh.
The name Charlie was based off of the racist sentiment that I named the baby in. Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
yeah. Because I did. It was like a metaphor that I wanted to. Yeah, a gender neutral name.
Oh.
But yes, I remember someone sent me your podcast. I listened to it, and I was like, it is based off that racism. Yes, but I have never been able to tell you guys in person. So yes.
Awesome.
I'm glad that you were able to tell us now. Wow.
Yeah.
I-
Thank you for holding on to that for like 2-3 years.
It's all it's still weird to know that people that we talk about listen to our podcast. But thank you for listening, and thank you for the feedback.
No, but I thought it was such a great detailed podcast because you guys picked up on that. And I don't think no one else has ever emailed me or messaged me about that
Mhm.
name.
Yeah.
And I think that was a really, it just shows how
Props to
much you
us.
guys know your
Yeah,
history very well.
We're pros. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Carolyn, and good luck on
Your dystopian
best of luck
novel.
on your
Yeah.
dystopian. Try not to get too depressed with our current dystopia as you're writing it.
Yes. Thank you guys. It's
All right.
been so much fun. Thank you.
And that was our author chat with Carolyn Huynh. You can find both of her novels, The Fortunes of Jaded Women and The Family Recipe, available at booksellers everywhere, including, as always, the Books and Boba Bookshop, where your purchases will support not only us at Books and Boba, but also your local bookstore. So if you do want to help us out, head on over to booksandboba.com and check out our bookshop link.
Yeah, so for those who are reading along with us for the month of May, we are reading Blob, a love story by Maggie Sue, and it is about a young woman who tries to shape a sentient blob into her perfect boyfriend. And I call this Asian flubber, and I really hope it is just as fun as that ridiculous movie.
Yeah, it's also Heritage Month, so we are doing one of our annual APAM reading challenges. Mira, can you tell us all about that?
Yeah, so this year's challenge is themed around the wedding banquet. So if you go on our Instagram at Books and Boba, you'll see our list of prompts. They're vaguely themed around like themes and elements of the wedding banquet, which was Andrew On's 2025 film, which is based on Ang Lee's film of the same name. So yeah, like if you guys are participating, make sure to tag us and we'll share your post on our stories.
Yeah, and that'll do it for this episode of Books and Boba. Thank you once again to Carolyn Huynh for joining us. Books and Boba, of course, is a proud member of the Potluck Podcast Collective. So if you've been hankering for more podcasts hosted by Asian Americans, especially during this Heritage Month, head on over to podcastpotluck.com and check out our fellow podcast pods. And yeah, thanks for listening.
We'll see you all next time.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening to Books and Boba. This podcast was hosted by Marvin Yue and Ri Ryu and edited and produced by Marvin Yue. Follow the book club on Twitter and Instagram by going to @BooksandBoba and engage with us on Goodreads on our Goodreads group. You can also check out past episodes of the podcast by going to booksandboba.com and by subscribing to us on your favorite podcast app. Don't forget, you can support Books and Boba and Asian American authors by purchasing books at our bookshop.org account. Check out the link in our show notes and also at booksandboba.com. Books and Boba is a proud member of the Potluck Podcast Collective, a collective of Asian American hosted podcasts featuring unique voices and stories from the Asian diaspora. Learn more about the collective and check out our fellow Potluck shows by visiting the website podcastpotluck.com. Thanks for listening.
Hey, sports fans. Welcome to Asians in Hockey. You may not realize it, but there's a rich history of Asians and AAPI folks who have contributed to the legacy of the greatest game on ice. From classic legends like Julie Chu and Robin Bawa to current greats like Leah Lum and Nick Suzuki, and even rising stars like Akane Shiga and Jason Robertson. We'll cover their stories, celebrate their accomplishments, and learn about their impact on the sport of hockey. I'm Nate Nakau, former beer league player, occasional youth hockey coach, and longtime hockey fan, and I'll be your host as we take a look at the rise of Asians in hockey. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Potluck Podcast Collective.